What was this game for girls actually hiding? Recently, a game called Stargirl has become quite popular again. At first glance, it doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary, just one of those typical Flash or web games aimed at young girls where you dress up a customizable character with different outfits. It was the kind of game that was very common back in the day. However, looking back, many players have begun to remember a strange feature in these games known as StarChat. This function allowed them to talk to boyfriends with supposed artificial intelligence, but sometimes they sounded a bit too human, almost as if they were real people on the other side. The story begins in a peculiar way. To understand how this strange case originated, we have to go back to the beginning. It's actually quite difficult to find information about this game, and I mean really difficult. For a game that was at least somewhat popular, that's pretty strange. But with a bit of digging, we know these games were created by a studio called Animoca Brands, which specialized in web and flash games. And I say games, because we aren't talking about a single isolated title. On the contrary, Stargirl was literally an entire saga with over 18 games released in a span of just 6 years. Of course, being typical web games, they didn't have much of a budget. Generally, each game was a copy-paste of the previous one, with slight differences in theme. First we had Stargirl, then Stargirl, Italia, Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and so on. It's clear these games were aimed at a female audience, much like the typical Barbie dress-up or makeup games that were popular back then. Stargirl was exactly that, a social simulator focused on making your character the queen of glamour on different fashion runways, dressing her up to look attractive and win over the boyfriends in the crowd. These games placed a huge emphasis on these boyfriends or bots, which could have many interactions with the player, like going on dates or sending basic messages. However, what has caught people's attention lately is a specific function. In the version Stargirl Beauty Queen, roughly the third game in the saga, one of the new features was StarChat. In short, StarChat was what we now know as an AI chatbot, used so players could chat with their boyfriends. It was meant to expand the interactions you could have, but this is exactly the part where former players realized something wasn't quite right. There are testimonies from girls who are now grown up and played this game back then. They remember the boyfriend's responses in StarChat being strangely realistic. It's said that these bots sometimes got weird, responding to players with insults, vulgar language, or even darker things, like making sexual comments to the player. And that's not all. For some reason, the chatbots occasionally had spelling errors. This is extremely strange for a chatbot because an AI doesn't usually make typos in its writing. This has led to the terrifying thought that these boyfriends were actually controlled by real people, specifically adult men who were talking to the young girls playing the game all along. While researching for this video, I came across a testimony from a user named Tricky Ranger on Reddit who shared her strange experience with the game as a child. I'm not quite sure how to start this or where to post it. I was wondering if anyone else had the same or a similar experience as me. It was around 2013 to 2015 when my sister and I constantly played Stargirl. The goal was to buy clothes, become famous, and get boyfriends. There's a part of the game I remember every now and then that doesn't sit right with me. It was a chat option where you could talk to your boyfriends and potential boyfriends, and I swear they would send you suggestive messages and use profanity. I was young back then, and I was with my friends. Sure, we were confused, but we didn't know anything. The boyfriends were supposed to be NPCs. Plus, Stargirl was aimed at a young audience. I don't know what's happening with the game now, but I know it's no longer in the App Store, and when I search for anything about the sexting part, I find nothing. If this isn't the right place to post this, tell me a better thread. I'm just very curious about this. Thanks. This post quickly filled up with comments, mainly from women who also claimed to have played the game as children. Even though they didn't pay much attention to the weirdness of StarChat at the time, remembering it years later feels uncomfortable. But was it really like that? Is it true the bots were real adults? Well, the answer, luckily, doesn't seem to be yes, or at least not entirely. To understand what was happening, we have to remember the era when this game was released. While AI is more popular now, chatbots have existed for years. They were just much more limited to generic, pre-programmed responses. But that's a half-truth. Even if an AI couldn't reason or structure sentences like it does today, there were tricks to make them sound more human. One of those tricks involves a bot that might explain everything. SimSimi. SimSimi was a bot launched in 2002 and was actually one of the first AI chatbots ever. Since the technology of the time didn't allow for very elaborate answers, its creators used a trick to make it more convincing. SimSimi had the ability to learn based on its conversations with other users. Simply put, if you talk to SimSimi, it would learn from you and replicate your way of speaking with other users. This gave SimSimi its essence. But since it was a bot with practically no censorship, and considering what the internet was like in those years, well, that explains a few things. What does this have to do with StarChat? It's believed that the developers of Stargirl might have used the SimSimi AI as a base for their bots. If the boyfriends were using the same AI as SimSimi, it would have caused them to replicate those behaviors. This explains why they insulted players, had spelling errors, and spoke vulgarly. SimSimi learned from its users, and most of them weren't exactly respectful. The Stargirl bots simply adapted that same attitude to the messages the players sent them. So, it doesn't seem like there was anything too sinister going on behind the scenes. It was likely just a malfunctioning bot. This would also explain why some people didn't report any issues. It was just SimSimi acting out without real control. Regardless, having bots say inappropriate things to young girls in an all-ages game was obviously wrong. That's why in later versions, the StarChat feature was removed, likely to avoid these AI malfunctions. There isn't much else to say about these games today, although it is quite uncomfortable to read the testimonies of what the bots told these girls years ago. Some even claim the bots could somehow detect their country and language, suggesting the game might have also been harvesting personal data. While it's likely just a case of bad AI, it's still haunting to think about the possibility that some developers might have had a hand in these chats. In the end, it really might have been a game for girls that was spying on you.